Hey there guys, Fireman Official here and welcome to this Age of Empires 4 video. So today we're doing a Chinese build order for a fast castle into Crossbowman. Now this strategy is really kind of designed if you're up against the HRE for example, and if the HRE go for a man-at-arms ram rush or something like that. Now the reason why we're going for Crossbowman is because man-at-arms are notoriously hard to destroy and kill and counter basically, and the main one that I can really find is the Crossbowman. It's an incredibly strong unit in terms of fighting against armoured units, and so of course it's right up there for the counters for man-at-arms. Now this particular opening very much mirrors my Chinese archer rush build order, and I'm trying to keep the Chinese build orders very consistent at the beginning, and this is because you won't necessarily have a particular strategy in mind at the beginning of the game. It just depends on what your opponent's doing, so always scouting is key. Also within the build order will be some flexibility. For instance, if you find that you can't get up to the castle age because your opponent's pressuring, you'll actually have enough wood to drop an archer range for some archers or a barracks for spearmen, whatever you need to do. Now the main aim and target for this build order is that you're going to get up to the castle age and have a archery range producing which is supervised by the imperial official to produce crossbowmen all under 7.5 minutes. Now you'll effectively have 3 archery ranges worth of crossbowmen being produced, at least for the initial phase of attack, but we'll go into more details a little bit later. But now let's get right into the build order. So first things first is we queue up an imperial official and we take our starting villagers to drop a mill near the berries, and we take a scout to gather our sheep at the mill so that the starting villagers can actually start herding the sheep. When the imperial official does come out, the imperial official will supervise the mill, and then the next 2 villagers will go to wood. We take our scout to find as many sheep as possible and bring them all back to the mill. And what you will do is you'll periodically take the imperial official to gather 20 gold from the mill, bring it back to the town centre, and then to go back to supervise the mill. What I recommend is take those villagers and deposit the food at the mill before you make the journey with your imperial official. That will make sure that all the villagers, when they do drop off food, will only do so under the supervision of the imperial official to get that bonus. Once you do have 2 villagers on wood, you're then going to send the next 4 villagers to food to make 10 in total. And then you're going to send the next 3 villagers to gold. Keep an eye out on your scout to gather as many sheep as possible, and also start looking to see where your opponent is and what they're doing. You need to keep an eye out because of course you need to survive basically until 7.5 minutes. Having said that, there is a bit of leeway incorporated in the build order, so should you need to drop a barracks for spearmen or an archer range for archers, you can do, and you have enough wood. You just need to delay your blacksmith when you get up to the castle age just a little bit, but not by much. We'll talk about the blacksmith a little bit later in the build, but as you can see we're taking our imperial official to gather gold and back to the mill in terms of supervision. Now we're about to get a 3rd villager to gold, and so we'll next need to queue up an imperial official. So you get 3 to gold and then an imperial official, and that new imperial official will supervise the gold villagers in the gold mine. After the imperial official comes out, you then queue up another 2 villagers to go to gold. But it's about now that you can actually age up. So we're going to get the Barbican of the Sun to try and protect the berries and the gold if we can. If you find that your map generation only allows you to build the Barbican protecting 1 key resource, again you may need to drop an outpost just in case your opponent is going for a rush strategy. But don't drop the outpost unless you really need it. Make sure you keep an eye out on scouting and what your opponent is doing. Okay, at this point we need to drop a house using a wood villager. And we're already taking 1 villager from gold to build the Barbican of the Sun, by the way. We should still be able to get up to the next stage by about 5 minutes, so it's not too slow and gives us enough time to adapt if we need to. And in total now we're going to work our way up to 4 villagers on gold. And the villager, don't forget, that is building the Barbican of the Sun to shift queue them back to the gold. Right, so now that we've got 4 villagers on gold, in total we're going to send the next 6 villagers to food. We want to get up to 16 on food, and that will give us plenty of food to be able to afford the crossbowmen and of course also get up to castle age. Now guys, just so you know, I do have the PDF build order available. Do check out the YouTube description in case you're interested in that. But otherwise, you know, I'm going through it with you now anyway. And yeah, we do want to just keep an eye on the imperial official. Get as many runs as you can back to the town centre with the 20 gold. It will all help in the long run. Alright, now we see our opponent, and we don't see too much just yet. But we want to keep an eye out for a barracks in case they're coming in with a man-at-arms ram rush, that kind of thing. We are up against the HRE, of course. And as you can see now, we can actually start to accumulate gold using the imperial official who is supervising the gold mine as well. Okay, now there's a bit of an extra walk there for the imperial official, so it's not the most efficient build that I've got here in terms of demonstration. That can happen sometimes, but it's not the end of the world there. Alright, 14 on food. We just want 2 more. And then when we do have 16 villagers on food, we're going to send the new villagers to wood. Now, so at this point, as you can see, we've got 220 wood. We can actually drop the archery range. We could have dropped barracks earlier if we needed to, if we're under pressure. So that's the flexibility that we have there. And we also want to build a house. Okay, working our way up. Now, to get to the next stage, we need 1,200 food and 600 gold. And we're almost there. So at this point, consider unqueuing any extra villagers you don't necessarily need right now, so that you can get to that 1,200 food mark quicker. We're going to do just that, and we're actually going to take 8 villagers from food to build the astronomical clock tower. Those villagers will go back to food. And now, as you can see, we've started to build the landmark at around 6 minutes 45 seconds, just under that. And it means we should have a good production of crossbowmen from the archery range. Okay, so now to talk about principles after we age up. We're actually going to take the imperial official from the gold mine to supervise the archery range as soon as we hit the castle age. And then we'll produce crossbows. We'll essentially keep queuing up crossbows and villagers as much as we possibly can. But once we find that we can't sustain the effectively 3 archery range production, we'll then start to move the imperial official to the wood to supervise the lumber camp. And then we'll be able to drop a blacksmith as well. So as you can see, we've got crossbowmen coming out all under 7.5 minutes. And yeah, we're doing really well now with the food. And as you can see, we're actually going to berries now as well, because of course it depends on how many sheep you get. I kind of base this build order on a typical number of sheep gathered. Not too many, so hopefully this should work pretty well. And as you can see, we're dropping down the blacksmith as well, and we'll be able to afford steeled arrow really quickly. So it's not just we're getting crossbowmen, we're going to get upgraded crossbowmen. Now, this imperial official that was on the archery range, I'm actually going to move him to supervise the blacksmith in order to make the research time even quicker for steeled arrow. Essentially, be flexible with this imperial official. He'll move from being at the archery range to the blacksmith, and then back to the lumber camp, and then back to the archery range once you find that you've queued up lots of crossbowmen. Don't forget to build houses using wood villagers. And now, as you can see, 8.5 minutes, we have a decent number of crossbowmen, which are now upgraded with steeled arrow. So we can move forward and start to cause a bit of problems for our opponent, hopefully. And so now the next steps are to really just continue to produce crossbowmen with the supervision from the imperial official at the archery range. And once you find out that you can't actually queue up anymore in terms of resources, you can move the imperial official to supervise the lumber camp. And then we will be researching siege engineering for rams. That's actually pretty important as well, especially if you're getting a good foothold in the game. Of course, don't research it unless you feel like you're actually going to be able to do a ram push, but it's just something definitely to keep in the back of your mind. If you find that rather you're actually kind of being pushed back a little bit and your opponent's actually got a decent military presence, you might want to think about getting siege. In particular, you might consider getting some Nester bees from the astronomical clock tower, or perhaps some springalds. It just really depends on what your opponent is getting themselves. If you find that they're booming away, you may need to think about doing some big damage very soon, because of course they may be ahead in terms of economy. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this build order tutorial, and if you did, do give the video a thumbs up as it really helps the channel. If you did like this Age of Empires 4 content, do hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so that you can keep up to date with new and advanced build orders. I'm working on the Chinese at the moment, but of course I will move on to other civilizations as well. If you are interested in seeing the full playlist of the build orders I have on the channel, click the right hand card screen now. But if you're more interested in seeing a very strong archer rush for the Chinese civilization, click the left hand card screen now. Take care guys, and see you next time.